I first noticed the shift in Ethan the night he came home late, later than usual, later than he ever had without calling. He stepped through the front door with a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes, the kind of smile someone wears when they want to be asked nothing. And yet everything about him begged for questions. Ethan wasn't the type to hide things. For the 7 years we'd been together, he had been steady, transparent, easy to read in a way that made me feel safe. But lately something had changed in him. And the more I tried to pinpoint when it started, the more I realized the truth. I had felt it long before I admitted it. "Long day?" I asked, watching the way his shoulders tensed before he answered. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Just work." But it wasn't just work, not the way he said it. His voice carried a weight, a hesitation, almost an apology. He walked past me, brushed a hand across my arm as he did, then disappeared into the hallway without another word. I stood there for a moment, trying to convince myself it was nothing. People get tired. Work gets stressful. Relationships go through calm and crowded seasons. But deep down, something unsettled me. A quiet certainty I didn't want to explore. Over the next week, the distance grew. He stayed up later. He woke up earlier. He guarded his phone in a way he never had before, face down, pocketed, password. And every time he said, "I'm fine," it sounded like a truth rehearsed, not lived. One evening, as he sat across from me at dinner, I watched him push food around his plate without eating. His gaze drifted somewhere far beyond the room, like he was in a conversation I wasn't invited into. "Ethan," I said softly, "you're somewhere else lately." His eyes met mine for a flicker of a moment, full of something fragile, fear, guilt, uncertainty. I couldn't tell which. "I know," he admitted. "I just need time to figure some things out." It wasn't an answer. It was a warning disguised as one. And that was when the central conflict of our marriage quietly revealed itself, not with shouting or accusations, but with the silence between us. A silence that held a secret he wasn't ready to share. As I cleared the dinner table later that night, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. Whatever Ethan was struggling with wasn't small. And it wasn't going away. The man I loved was hiding something. And the more he tried to protect me from it, the more it threatened to break everything we had. The only question that mattered now was whether I was ready to uncover what he was so afraid to tell me. By the time October settled in, the tension in our house felt almost physical, like a draft slipping under a closed door, chilling the air no matter how warm the room was. Ethan and I still moved through our routines, but everything between us had become careful, measured, wrapped in an invisible layer of caution neither of us acknowledged out loud. I kept telling myself that if something was truly wrong, he would come to me. But trust doesn't erase instinct, and mine had begun whispering louder every day. I tried to focus on my work at the high school, on grading essays and planning lessons, but even my students noticed my distraction. "You okay, Ms. Collins?" one asked as I stared too long at a blank page. I forced a smile and said I was fine, but the truth followed me home every afternoon. Ethan always used to greet me at the door, sometimes with dinner, sometimes with a goofy grin and a glass of wine. Now he sat on the couch with his laptop open, posture tense, eyes flicking to the hallway every time I entered, as if he needed a moment to switch versions of himself before speaking to me. One night, when I placed my hand on his shoulder, he startled so sharply he nearly dropped his laptop. "Ethan," I whispered, "this isn't normal. You're not normal." He closed the computer slowly, like bracing himself. "I know," he said. "I'm trying." "Trying for what?" His breath hitched. "Just give me a little more time." Time. He kept asking for it, but never telling me why. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen and found him standing by the window, staring at his phone. The sunlight caught his face in a way that made it impossible to ignore the exhaustion there, the shadows under his eyes, the tight line of his mouth. "Is someone bothering you?" I asked. "Is this about work? About your family? Just tell me what's happening." He hesitated, then shook his head. "It's nothing you've done." But that was exactly what terrified me, the feeling that whatever he was hiding wasn't about me but could destroy us all the same. Later that week, I went searching for a sweater I'd left in the guest room closet. When I opened the door, I froze. On the small desk beside the window, There was a stack of papers, handwritten notes, letters maybe, folded neatly in a way that didn't look accidental. Ethan never wrote letters. Not to anyone. I didn't touch them, I just stared. Long enough for dread to bloom in my chest, slow and heavy. I heard his footsteps behind me. Ayla, he used my nickname softly, don't go through those. His voice wasn't angry. It was broken. And that was the moment I realized something undeniable. This wasn't stress. This wasn't work. This wasn't temporary. Whatever Ethan was hiding wasn't just a secret. It was the center of a truth powerful enough to unravel everything we had built. Evelyn woke the next morning with the uneasy sense that the night had left something unfinished, like a door left cracked open in the dark. The sunlight spilling through her blinds felt too calm for how fast her mind was racing. She replayed Noah's expression from the previous evening, the half-formed words, the tension in his jaw, the way he kept glancing at her as if he was afraid she'd disappear if he looked away too long. At first, she'd assumed it was just work stress or one of his usual worries he tried so hard to hide. But this was different. It was the kind of silence that held weight. Purpose. Fear. And secrets. She found him in the kitchen, standing barefoot by the counter, staring at a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. When he looked up, she caught the flicker of conflict in his eyes, a mixture of guilt and determination. It made her chest tighten. "You slept okay?" he asked, but his voice lacked its usual warmth. "I guess." She stepped closer. "But you didn't tell me the whole truth last night." For a moment, Noah didn't respond. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit she'd memorized years ago. "I didn't know how," he admitted quietly. Evelyn's breath hitched. "Then try now." Noah drew in a long, steadying breath. "There's something I've wanted for a long time, something I've kept to myself because I wasn't sure how you'd react. And the more I tried to ignore it, the worse it got. I didn't want it to change anything between us." His voice trembled at the last sentence, and that, more than anything, made her heart ache. "Nothing changes unless you shut me out," she said softly. "Whatever it is, I want to understand." He finally met her eyes. Really met them. And in that moment, Evelyn realized how deeply his silence had been eating at him. Noah wasn't a man who feared much, but he feared losing her. That fear was carved into every line of his expression. "I'm scared you won't see me the same," he confessed. "Then tell me, and let me decide." Noah's shoulders dropped as if he'd been carrying this weight for far too long. His throat tightened, and for a second Evelyn thought he might back out again, but he didn't. He took one small step closer, then another, until their breaths overlapped in the quiet room. "Evelyn," he said, voice low, "there's something I need to show you. Not just tell you." Her pulse kicked. "Show me what?" He hesitated long enough for her worry to swell before he reached into the drawer beside him. His hand shook, just slightly, as he pulled something out and held it between them. But he didn't reveal it. "Not yet. Before you see this," Noah murmured, "you need to know, this secret has the power to change everything." Evelyn swallowed hard. "Then let it." Noah inhaled, bracing himself. And finally, slowly, opened his hand. The object in Noah's hand gleamed faintly in the morning light, small, metallic, and far more symbolic than Evelyn first realized. At a glance, it looked like a simple key. But its shape was unusual, elongated, engraved with a pattern she had never seen, and cold enough to suggest it had been hidden away for a long time. "Noah," she whispered, "what is that?" He exhaled shakily. "It's part of something I should have told you about years ago. Something I never thought I'd need to reopen." Her heartbeat slowed, heavy and deliberate. "Reopen what?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he closed her fingers around the key, letting her feel its weight. The gesture was intimate, almost reverent, but it carried a gravity that made her nerves electrify. "There's a storage unit on the east side of town," he said finally. "Number 312. It's mine. It's been mine since before you and I ever met." Evelyn blinked. "Okay, but why hide that from me?" "It's not the unit I was hiding." His jaw tightened. "It's what's inside." A chill unfurled down her spine. She tried to read his expression, but his features were guarded, haunted. Whatever truth he was carrying had left a mark deep enough for her to see even now. "Noah," she said softly, "how bad is it?" He glanced away, just for a second, but the movement told her everything. "It's not dangerous," he said. "Not anymore. But it's personal. And messy. And I didn't want you to think I was someone I'm not." Evelyn stepped closer. "You're someone I chose. Someone I trust. But trust goes both ways." His eyes softened at her words, but the fear didn't fully leave. "I'm taking you there today," he said. "You need to see it. I need you to see it." The finality in his tone sent a shiver through her. This wasn't a decision he'd made lightly. This was the kind of confession that had been clawing at him for years. Evelyn gently squeezed his hand. "Then let's go." For a moment, Noah looked relieved, as if the simple act of agreeing had taken a brick off his chest. But beneath the relief, she sensed something else. Resignation. As they left the apartment, the city felt unusually still. Traffic hummed, doors opened, the world functioned normally, but in Evelyn's chest, everything was shifting. She could feel the fault line forming between the life she knew and whatever waited behind that storage unit door. When they reached the car, Noah paused at the driver's side, keys in hand. "Evelyn," he said, voice low, "before we get there, I need you to promise you won't walk away without hearing everything." She held his gaze, firm and steady. "I'm not going anywhere." Noah nodded, almost painfully. "Then hold on. Today changes more than you realize." He started the engine. And for the first time, Evelyn felt truly afraid of the truth. The drive across town felt longer than it should have. Noah kept one hand on the wheel and the other tapping restlessly against his thigh, a rhythm Evelyn recognized as his mind spiraling. She didn't push him with questions. Not yet. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was loaded, stretched tight like a wire waiting to snap. When they finally turned into the row of aging storage units, Evelyn felt her stomach knot. The place was quiet, almost deserted, with rusted roll-up doors and numbers fading from decades under the sun. Unit 312 sat at the far end, tucked in the shadow of a leaning street lamp. Noah parked, but he didn't move. "You sure you're ready to see this?" he asked, his voice lower than she'd ever heard it. "Ready or not," she said gently, "we're here." Noah nodded once, slow, deliberate, and stepped out. Evelyn followed, the key he'd given her still warm in her palm. As they walked toward the unit, she kept her eyes on him, noticing the subtle shift in his posture, as if the air here carried old memories he'd spent years trying to outrun. When they reached the metal door, Noah closed his hand over hers. "Let me," he murmured. She handed him the key, watching the way his fingers trembled as he slid it into the lock. The click was soft, almost too soft for the weight of what it unlocked. Noah hesitated before lifting the door, and Evelyn could feel his breath hitch. The door rattled upward. Inside, dust floated in a thin beam of sunlight slicing through the shadows. The space was neat but sparse, no stacks of boxes, no furniture, no forgotten belongings. Instead, a single wooden crate sat in the center of the concrete floor. Old, weathered, and marked with a symbol Evelyn didn't recognize. "Noah," she whispered, "what is this?" He didn't answer. He stepped inside, crossing the cold floor toward the crate. Evelyn followed him, her pulse quickening with every step. When he reached the box, he rested his hands on the lid, breathing deeply, as if preparing for impact. "This," he said, "is the part of my life I buried. The part one never wanted to drag you into." Evelyn placed a hand on his back. "You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm choosing to be here." His shoulders eased, but only slightly. "I need you to remember that," he said. Then he lifted the lid. Inside was a collection of objects laid out with deliberate care, a worn leather journal, a stack of sealed envelopes, a bundle of photographs tied with a fraying string, and a small velvet box. Each item looked like it carried its own story, its own wound. Evelyn's breath caught. These are from before us?" "No," Noah said quietly. He looked at her, eyes dark with truth finally rising to the surface. "They're from the life I never told you I lived." Evelyn's hands hovered over the crate, unsure whether to touch the carefully arranged items or let them remain untouched, sacred in their secrecy. Noah's eyes followed hers, searching for judgment, anger, anything, but finding only the quiet determination that had always drawn him to her. "These belong to her," he said finally, his voice tight with memory. "The woman I loved before I met you." Evelyn felt her chest tighten. A part of her had feared this, had imagined every scenario where his past bled into their present, but the reality hit harder than she expected. "And you kept them?" she asked softly. "All this time?" I didn't want to bring her into our life. I thought if I buried it, if I never spoke of it, it would stay buried. That we could stay, or us." His hands trembled slightly as he gestured to the items. "But the truth is, it never left me." "Not really." Her throat ached, a mix of sorrow, confusion, and something sharper, betrayal. She had always trusted him, believed in the honesty that had drawn her into his quiet world. And yet here was evidence of a chapter he'd never shared, a secret garden fenced off with silence and guilt. "Why now?" she asked, her voice nearly a whisper. "Why show me this?" He swallowed, eyes dark. "Because I couldn't lie anymore. Because every time I came home, every time I looked at you, I felt like I was living a half-truth. And I love you too much to keep hiding it, even if it hurts." Evelyn wanted to feel anger. She wanted to feel betrayal. She wanted to demand explanations, apologies, absolution. Instead, she felt a strange blend of empathy and heartbreak, her mind racing to understand the man she thought she knew. "This changes things," she said, though the words felt both heavy and inadequate. "Not who we are, but who we've been until now." Noah's hand brushed against hers, tentative, almost fearful. "I want to rebuild. I want us to face the truth together, not apart. But I need you to know, it won't be easy." She nodded, swallowing hard against the lump in her throat. "I know. And I'm willing to try. I can't pretend this isn't a wound, but maybe together we can make it a scar, one that reminds us to be honest." He exhaled slowly, relief flickering in his eyes, though it was tempered by the weight of what had yet to be spoken. "There's more," he admitted. "Letters, journal entries, things I've written but never sent, things I thought I'd destroy. I didn't. I couldn't. Not until I knew you could understand." Evelyn studied him, her pulse quickening not with fear this time, but with the gravity of the trust he was extending. Every quiet confession, every hidden fragment of his past, was a test of the bond they'd built. And they were standing at the threshold, both aware that stepping through it could change everything or nothing at all. "Then show me," she whispered. "I'm ready." Noah nodded, taking a deep breath. The crate was only the beginning, and the truth he had carried alone for years was finally beginning to unfold. And in that quiet storage room, surrounded by the echoes of a past neither of them could ignore, Evelyn realized, the real journey was only just beginning. Noah reached for the first envelope, careful not to tear the delicate paper. His hands were steady now, but Evelyn could see the tension lingering in the way his fingers trembled just slightly. Each letter had a date scrawled in faint ink, each one a frozen moment from a life she had never been part of. "These I wrote, but never sent," he said. His voice was low, almost reverent. "To her. To explain everything I couldn't say in person. Everything I regretted." Evelyn hesitated, aware that touching these letters was like stepping into a room she wasn't sure she was allowed to enter. "You loved her," she said softly, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "I knew about her, but I never knew how much of you was still there." "No," he said quickly, almost defensively. "I'm here. With you. I love you. But this is the unfinished chapter one carried alone because I didn't want to risk us." She looked at him, searching his eyes. And in that gaze, she saw the weight of years, the quiet torment of someone who had been living in half-truths. She felt both empathy and hurt, understanding the depth of the secret he had borne while resenting that he had borne it without her. "Why show me now?" she asked. "Why not destroy it, if it was only hurting you?" He took a deep breath. "Because I realized that hiding it even from you wasn't protecting anyone. It was building a wall between us. And I can't build walls with the woman I love." Evelyn exhaled, letting the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. She reached for the first letter, tracing the edges with her fingertips. As she unfolded it, the words on the page revealed not just his past, but the struggles, regrets, and confessions he had carried silently. Every phrase echoed with vulnerability, every line a testament to the man she knew and didn't fully know. "I never imagined this," she murmured, her voice trembling. "I thought our lives were simpler. But it wasn't just about her. It was about you hiding pieces of yourself from me." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I was scared. Scared you wouldn't understand, scared you'd see me differently. And I thought I could protect us by keeping it quiet. But the truth always comes out eventually." Evelyn looked at him, realizing that the man she loved was not perfect, but he was honest now in a way he had never been before. And perhaps that honesty, messy, painful, raw, was exactly what they needed to survive the storm his secret had created. "Then we face it together," she said, her hand finding his. "Everything." Noah squeezed her hand, relief and fear mingling in his expression. "Together," he agreed. And in that moment, surrounded by the artifacts of a hidden past, Evelyn understood that the path ahead would not be easy, but it would be theirs. The crate, the letters, the confessions, they were only the beginning. Evelyn unfolded the second envelope, hesitating for just a moment before letting her eyes follow the careful, almost desperate handwriting. Each word was a window into Noah's past, a version of him she had never truly known, a man wrestling with guilt, longing, and choices that had quietly shaped the person he had become. "This is a lot," she whispered, feeling the weight of years pressing down on her chest. "You carried all of this alone?" Noah nodded. His hands rested lightly on the crate, his shoulders curved as if the memories themselves were a physical burden. "I thought I was protecting you," he admitted. "I thought if I kept it hidden, I could shield us from pain. But hiding it only made it worse. It made me someone I didn't want you to see." Evelyn swallowed hard. The ache in her chest wasn't just about betrayal, it was about understanding. Understanding the fear and shame that had kept Noah silent for so long. And in that understanding, she realized something crucial. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about the courage to be truthful, even when truth hurt. "You could have told me any time," she said softly, her voice a fragile mix of reproach and compassion. "I would have listened. We could have faced this together." "I know," he said, voice breaking slightly. "And that's why I'm showing you now. Because I can't do it alone anymore. I don't want to hide from you ever again." Evelyn looked at the final item in the crate, a small, velvet box. Her breath caught. "What's this?" He hesitated, the air thickening between them. "That is the hardest part," he said. "It's the piece of my life that made me question everything about who I am and who I want to be with you." Her hand reached toward it instinctively, but she paused. She needed to hear him say it. "Noah, tell me." He opened the box slowly. Inside was a delicate bracelet, engraved with a name she recognized instantly, his ex-wife's. The realization hit her like a cold wave. "You kept this? After all these years?" "I did," he said, eyes fixed on hers. "Because part of me needed closure. Part of me needed to understand who I was before we met, so I could truly be here with you. I never wanted it to be a secret, but I was scared of what you'd think." Evelyn exhaled sharply. Anger, confusion, hurt all tangled with empathy washed through her. The bracelet was a symbol, but it wasn't the betrayal she had feared. It was a bridge, fragile and honest, between past mistakes and the life they were trying to build together. "You should have trusted me," she said, her voice steadying. "That's the only part one needed from you." Noah reached for her hand again, his grip firm but trembling. "I do trust you," he said. "And now, finally, you can trust me too. No more secrets. No more hiding." Evelyn nodded, letting the tension ease slightly, though her heart still raced. The truth had been revealed. The secret had transformed everything, not in the way she feared, but in the way she hadn't anticipated. And in that quiet storage unit, surrounded by the artifacts of his hidden life, she realized the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, she felt the fragile stirrings of hope. The hardest part wasn't over, but the path forward was finally clear. Evelyn and Noah left the storage unit in silence, the crisp autumn air wrapping around them like a fragile promise. The streets of the city were alive with ordinary life, cars humming, people walking dogs, children laughing, but inside her chest, Evelyn felt the weight of extraordinary truth settling, reshaping everything she thought she knew. She glanced at him. Noah's hands rested lightly on the steering wheel, knuckles pale, eyes distant. He wasn't looking at her yet, not because he didn't want to, but because he was still processing, still feeling the tremors of a past long buried finally brought to light. "Do you regret showing me?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. He shook his head. "No. I was terrified, but I can't live half-truths anymore. Not with you. I don't want to lose us because I was scared to be honest." Evelyn nodded. She understood that fear all too well, the fear of judgment, the fear of losing love, the fear that some truths are too heavy to bear. But the courage to face it, to let it surface, was what made him human. And more than that, it was what reminded her why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. They drove the rest of the way home in quiet reflection, a comfortable tension between them that wasn't empty but charged with understanding. When they entered their apartment, the familiarity of the space, its warm, muted lighting, the faint aroma of his coffee felt different now. Not because the apartment had changed, but because they had. Sitting together on the couch, Evelyn finally spoke. "I'm not going to lie, it hurts. Seeing that part of your life, the things you hid, the letters, the bracelet, it hurts. But it shows me you trusted me in the end. And that's more than I expected." Noah reached for her hand, holding it gently, as if anchoring himself in her presence. "I'm sorry for keeping it from you. I thought I was protecting us, but I see now that I was only protecting myself. And I see now that love requires truth, even the uncomfortable kind." Evelyn leaned into him, letting the warmth of his body and the rhythm of his heartbeat settle her scattered thoughts. She realized that the hurt she felt was not the end, but the beginning of something more honest. The quiet secret that had haunted them for years had finally been brought into the light, and in that light, they had a choice: retreat or rebuild. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I want to face it with you. Whatever comes next, we do it together." Noah pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, the gesture small but infinitely significant. "Together," he echoed. And as they sat there, hands entwined, hearts cautiously open, Evelyn realized that the secret he had hidden for so long had not destroyed them, it had transformed them. Not perfectly, not without scars, but with a clarity and honesty they had never known before. In that moment, the past and present coexisted, fragile and unshakable, and Evelyn understood that love was not the absence of secrets, but the courage to face them side by side. Days passed after the storage unit, but Evelyn felt as though time itself had shifted. The city outside continued its usual rhythm, yet inside their apartment, every glance, every word, carried the weight of unspoken understanding. The secret that had loomed over them for years was no longer a shadow, it was part of the fabric of their lives, stitched in with the threads of honesty and vulnerability. Noah had returned to his usual routines, but with a subtle difference. He was quieter, yes, but quieter with intention rather than evasion. When he spoke, his words were deliberate, honest, and unguarded. And Evelyn found herself listening differently, hearing not just the surface, but the undercurrent of his truth, the echoes of what had been revealed. One evening, as they shared dinner, Evelyn reached across the table and took his hand. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady, "about how fragile trust is, and how resilient it can be when it's earned. I saw your past, Noah, and I didn't turn away. And I don't want you to ever hide from me again." He squeezed her hand, eyes glistening with relief. "I won't," he promised. "I can't. Not after everything. You've given me more than forgiveness, you've given me understanding, and that's more than I ever hoped for." Evelyn smiled softly. "We'll have scars," she admitted, "and reminders of mistakes and secrets. But maybe that's okay. Maybe love isn't about perfection. Maybe it's about choosing each other, again and again, even when the truth is hard." Noah nodded, a slow, thoughtful movement. "I never want to hide from you again. And I never want you to doubt that everything I am now, everything I hope to be. I hope to be with you." The apartment seemed warmer that night, as if the weight of silence had been lifted, replaced by a quiet confidence born from vulnerability. Evelyn felt the shift in her own chest, a lightness she hadn't realized she'd been missing. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be free of challenges, but the foundation they now had, raw, honest, unbroken, gave her hope. As they cleared the table together, moving in quiet harmony, Evelyn reflected on what had changed. The secret, once hidden and powerful enough to destroy them, had instead transformed their relationship. It had forced them to confront fear, to navigate pain, and to emerge not unscathed, but more conscious, more intentional, and more deeply connected. Sitting on the couch later, fingers intertwined, she whispered, almost to herself, "Love isn't easy. But it's worth it. Every risk, every truth, every moment of courage, it's all worth it." Noah leaned closer, resting his forehead against hers. "Every moment," he echoed. And in the quiet that followed, Evelyn understood that some truths are not meant to break us, but to change us. To make us see that even in the aftermath of secrets and mistakes, love can survive, evolve, and flourish. Together, they closed their eyes, letting the stillness sink in, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The secret had transformed everything, but in doing so, it had also given them the one thing neither had expected: clarity, courage, and the quiet promise of a future built on truth.